Hey, what's up, everyone? Dragon back again, here to tell you that you should be reading Titus Crow Volume 1. So, Titus Crow Volume 1 is a collection of stories that kind of follow the character of Titus Crow and basically takes place within Lovecraft's Cthulhu, elder god mythos, so to speak. It is essentially kind of a continuation of the mythology that Lovecraft himself kind of built and founded. In traditional Lovecraftian style, which these stories very much follow, it's a kind of a series of individuals who are kind of discovering kind of the darker underlying mechanics of the universe, the way it all works, kind of peeling back the veil of ignorance, so to speak, kind of the way we all see the world, the universe, how we have been led to believe how it all works, and kind of see the real inner workings of reality as it is, and kind of the madness, no pun intended, that kind of comes with that. And basically, these individuals, it's a journey of kind of discovery of kind of the maddening reality that is the universe in which we live in. But it is a story of a rabbit hole in the sense that whereas your first perhaps instinct is when you discover this, when you uncover all this, is to essentially kind of go mad or turn away or deny it or essentially, just fall into despair when you kind of realize how insignificant we are, and just how uncaring these beings of, great power and knowledge are, and realize that we don't really matter. And that's kind of the bedrock, so to speak, of Lovecraft's work, is that we don't matter in the grand scheme of anything. But what these characters do is that once you kind of get past that initial shock, if you will, there is a hunger to know more. And even this, what you discover is terrifying and dangerous, and there is dramatic repercussions to this. And once they dive into this, this world, that which they were ignorant of now turns its focus onto them. When you find when you see them, they see you. So it's kind of the give and take here. But the reward of knowledge, the vast amount of knowledge you can accumulate for them, kind of outweighs the sense of despair that might possibly set in with coming to understand these certain truths. And that's really what drives these characters, and that's really what these stories are about, is the pursuit of knowledge, and how amazing these truths are. Once you kind of get past your own insignificance in the grand scheme of things, you realize that what is out there to learn, the wealth of knowledge that is in fact out there, is so incredible that it essentially overshadows the darkness, and you find these characters confronting and dealing with things that might otherwise break someone as an individual, as a person, but doesn't, and they find themselves fighting against them because what there is to gain out there in terms of knowledge is, again, so incredible and so vast that it makes dealing with all these obstacles and terrifying elements worth doing so. And through these stories, you realize that there's organizations that are put together to secretly combat these darker forces, and how humanity is kind of growing in its knowledge almost in secret. And that's really what drives it. It's really, in the context of this very dark universe, there is the thirst for knowledge and the thrill of discovery, and it's kind of really the basis of what science is. That's what drives scientists forward, is what might we learn tomorrow? If we uncover one thing, what questions will, it cause us to ask? When Neil deGrasse Tyson, the famous astrophysicist, once said that, what excites him most is not the questions we're asking today. It's kind of the questions we'll be asking tomorrow. Meaning, there are discoveries we have yet to make that will lead us to ask questions that will be bigger and grander than the ones we ask today, because we don't even know to ask those questions yet. And that's really what drives these characters, is to learn more. It's to find out more. It's kind of to uncover the power of these elder gods and kind of these beings that inhabit reality in a way that we before at best could only dream of. And because of that thrill of the possibility of discovery, again, it drives them to deal with and confront and take on risks that most people probably would not. And they are confronted by these beings. They come into contact with these beings, and at some point they're even threatening, telling them that if you continue down this road, we will come for you. And yet, it is kind of their willingness to band together. And that is kind of how the weapon against them that these creatures try to use is they try to divide them. They try to appeal to their frailty as human beings. They try to appeal to the weakest components that make up essentially the human psyche, the human condition. And what these characters do is they lean more heavily on their strengths, that which binds them together, that's what unifies them all together, and that is wanting to know more, uncovering this kind of, or getting a taste of the forbidden fruit, so to speak. And that is what helps unite them, drive them forward, and uncover amazing troves, treasure troves of knowledge. So yes, the aesthetic of these stories are very dark and very grim. And again, it's the Lovecraftian universe, so if you are familiar with it, this will not come as a surprise. If you are not familiar with Lovecraft, I have recommended a few of his stories on this series. But quick summary: it's very dark, it's very bleak, and ultimately humanity does not matter. And basically, within these stories, especially these stories that kind of build upon his mythology, it basically teaches us that for humanity to matter, humanity has to make itself matter. It doesn't matter just because, and these beings aren't going to make humanity matter. These beings don't care about humanity one way or the other. They're not evil towards, they just don't care about us. We do not matter to them. We are insects to them. So, for humanity to have a purpose, so to speak, humanity must create one for itself. Humanity must essentially become its own divine force in and of itself to drive itself forward, because these gods are not going to do it for us, essentially. So that's really what this story is about. The story is kind of these stories, in a weird way, and this is kind of my takeaway from it, was that it's kind of a celebration of humanity in a weird way. It's humanity kind of, harnessing these powers and using it for their own ends, not for evil or, evil ambition, but rather to just kind of acquire this knowledge that has been kind of reserved for these beings of great power, and kind of taking it for themselves. And who knows, and by doing that, by harnessing these power, by obtaining this knowledge, we might in time elevate ourselves to something more akin to them. I mean, possibly. So it's really humanity seizing its own destiny, taking control of itself, and not backing down from kind of our celestial bully, so to speak, these beings of greater power who feel they can essentially just kind of muscle around and push us around. And again, there is a thrill of discovery in the story, and you see these characters who are just so excited to learn more in spite of, the adversity they face. Because like I said, there is a fair amount of that in it, and when the kind of adversity they face is so terrifying, and it's almost, it messes with your head in certain ways, in traditional H.P. Lovecraft fashion, but that's what makes it fun, because it's almost a battle of wills. It's the will of these beings trying to basically, press down upon us, and it's kind of humanity pushing back in a way against them, resisting them, essentially, basically saying, it doesn't matter if we came to be by accident or a fluke, we are here now, and because there is no manifest destiny, because there is no fate, we essentially have the free will and the capability and the possibilities to achieve whatever we want. There is no preordained path for humanity. We are a species that came about by these creatures, and we can essentially achieve whatever we want to achieve. We are not bound to any kind of order. So it is kind of this weird celebration of humanity. Like I said, it's kind of an uplifting story if you can kind of get past a lot of the grim and gloom, which personally I love. So I have no problem reading a story with plenty of that in it. But yeah, it definitely builds upon what Lovecraft created, and I think it does so in a very complimentary way without being patronizing. And what I mean by that is that while it does feel like it grew out of Lovecraft's imagination, it's not afraid to kind of go beyond perhaps his limitations of it. It takes it into new areas while still feeling very familiar, but at the same time exploring this mythology from different angles. I mean, Lovecraft was a kind of a a very dour individual in his life. He's a very interesting historical figure. And if you're into literature or just kind of looking at more like 20th century, writers, and people, who kind of use their imaginations to kind of push industry. He's one of those classic figures where he really didn't achieve his level of fame till after his passing, which seems to be the case with a lot of creative individuals. I would hope that's not going to be the case with me, but yeah, but he's a character who has influenced probably a lot of people you guys are familiar with. It's people, writers, directors, a lot of comic book creators. There's a lot of people who are directly influenced by H.P. Lovecraft. So without you even realizing it, might have been kind of being exposed to some of his, kind of his sensibilities without even realizing, because you're being exposed to it through other creative individuals. But again, these stories feel like they grew out of his imagination and are going beyond it, while still very much being rooted in what he created and not feeling like it's being removed from it, like it's now, like it's not just kind of essentially taking certain aesthetics from it and then doing completely something different. It definitely feels like it's part of the universe he created, but it definitely feels like it's part of a universe. Like he created something that by design was kind of going to keep growing beyond him. And these stories are a great example of that. It's something that feels like his work. He created a mythology that outlasted him, and it was probably going to outlast all of us. In 100 years from now, when we're all dead, and there are going to be stories with Cthulhu and Dagon in them. And that's kind of the beauty of this universe that he's made, is that it is ever evolving, ever growing, and not bound to any one creative individual for it to continue to do so. So yeah, Titus Crow Volume 1. There is more books down the road, but this one really is a great example of taking something old and making it new, and telling a very human story in the guise of cosmic horror. Which again, a cosmic horror I think forces people to really band together, because it is a setting in which nothing out there is really looking out for us. So we really have to stand together, because we are literally all we have in the context of these kinds of narratives. So, Titus Crow Volume 1. Have you read it? If so, what did you think? Are you familiar with Lovecraft? Have you read any of the actual Lovecraftian stories from the Cthulhu mythology, or were you introduced to the original works through these kind of expanded works through other writers, or are you a fan of Lovecraft and then you want all things Cthulhu essentially, so you just dive into like all the expanded works? However you came to read it or become familiar with this mythology, let me know. I'm most curious to hear what you guys think. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace!